The legend of Ra and Isis. Now, Isis was a woman who possessed words of power. Her heart was wearied with the millions of men, and she chose the millions of gods, but she esteemed more highly millions of spirits. Ak. And she meditated in her heart, saying, quote, "Cannot I, by the means of the sacred name of God, make myself mistress of earth and become a goddess like unto Ra in heaven and upon earth?" Unquote. Now behold, each day Ra entered at the head of his holy mariners and established himself upon the throne of the two horizons. The Holy One had grown old. He dribbled at the mouth. His spittle fell upon the earth, and his slobbering dropped upon the ground. And Isis kneaded it with earth in her hand, and formed thereof a sacred serpent in the form of a spear. She set it not upright before her face, but let it lie upon the ground in the path whereby the great God went forth, according to his heart's desire, into his double kingdom. Now the holy God arose, and the gods who followed him, as though he were Pharaoh, went with him. And he came forth according to his daily wont, and the sacred serpent bit him. The flame of life departed from him, and he who dwelt among the cedars was overcome. The holy God opened his mouth, and the cry of his majesty reached unto heaven. His company of gods said, "What hath happened?" And his gods exclaimed, "What is it?" But Ra could not answer, for his jaws trembled and his members quaked. The poison spread swiftly through his flesh, just as the Nile invadeth all his land. When the great God had stabilized his heart, he cried unto those who were in his train, saying, quote, "Come unto me, O ye who have come into being from my body, ye gods who have come forth from me, make ye known unto Kephra that a dire calamity hath fallen upon me. My heart perceiveth it, but my eyes see it not. My hand hath not caused it, nor do I know who hath done this unto me. Never have I felt such pain, neither can sickness cause more woe than this. I am a prince, the son of a prince, a sacred essence which hath proceeded from God. I am a great one, the son of a great one, and my father planned my name. I have multitudes of names and multitudes of forms, and my existence is in every god. I have been proclaimed by the heralds Tum and Horus, and my father and my mother uttered my name, but it hath been hidden within me by him that begat me, who would not that the words of power of any seer should have dominion over me. I come forth to look upon that which I had made. I was passing through the world which I created, when lo, something stung me, but what I know not. Is it fire? Is it water? My heart is on fire, my flesh quaketh, and trembling hath seized all my limbs. Let there be brought unto me the children of the gods, with healing words, and with lips that know, and with power which reacheth unto heaven." Unquote. The children of every god came unto him in tears. Isis came with her healing words, and with her mouth full of the breath of life, with her enchantments which destroy sickness, and with her words of power which make the dead to live. As she spoke, saying, quote, "What has come to pass, O Holy Father? What has happened? A serpent has bitten thee, and a thing which thou created has lifted up his head against thee. Verily it shall be cast forth with my healing words of power, and I will drive it away from before the sight of thy sunbeams." Unquote. The holy God opened his mouth and said, quote, "I was passing along my path, and I was going through 2 regions of my lands, according to my heart's desire, to see that which I had created, when lo, I was bitten by a serpent, which I saw not. Is it fire? Is it water? I am colder than water. I am hotter than fire. All my flesh sweats. I quake. My eye has no strength. I cannot see the sky. And the sweat rushes to my face, even as in the time of summer." Unquote. Then said Isis unto Ra, quote, "O tell me thy name, Holy Father, for whosoever shall be delivered by thy name shall live." Unquote. And Ra said, quote, "I have made the heavens and the earth. I have ordered the mountains. I have created all that is above them. I have made the water. I have made to come into being the great and the wide sea. I have made the bull of his mother, from whom spring the delights of love. I have made the heavens. I have stretched out the 2 horizons like a curtain, and I have placed the soul of the gods within them. I am he who, if he opens his eyes, doth make the light, and if he closes them, darkness cometh into being. At his command the Nile riseth, and the gods know not his name. I have made the hour, I have created the days. I bring forward the festivals of the year. I create the Nile flood. I make the fire of life, and I provide food in the houses. I am Kephra in the morning. I am Ra at noon, and I am Tum at evening." Unquote. Meanwhile, the poison was not taken away from his body, but it pierced deeper, and the great god could no longer walk. Then said Isis unto Ra, quote, "What thou hast said is not thy name. O tell it unto me, and the poison shall depart, for he shall live whose name shall be revealed." Unquote. Now the poison burned like fire, and it was fiercer than the flame and the furnace, and the majesty of the god said, quote, "I consent that Isis shall search into me, and that my name shall pass from me into her." Unquote. Then the god hid himself from the gods, and his place in the boat of millions of years was empty. And when the time arrived for the heart of Ra to come forth, Isis spake unto her son Horus, saying, quote, "The god hath bound himself by an oath to deliver up his 2 eyes," in brackets, the sun and the moon. Unquote. Thus was the name of the great god taken from him, and Isis, the lady of enchantments, said, quote, "Depart, poison, go forth from Ra. O eye of Horus, go forth from the god and shine outside his mouth. It is I who work, it is I who make to fall down upon the earth the vanquished poison. For the name of the great god hath been taken away from him. May Ra live, and may the poison die, may the poison die, and may Ra live." Unquote. These are the words of Isis, the great goddess, the queen of the gods, who knew Ra by his own name. This famous story tells us that the goddess is already an adept, but nevertheless feels that there are limitations to her power. Therefore she is hungry for more knowledge and sets out to extort an important and revealing magical secret from her father, the sun god. The technique is in part tantric, that is to say, that it manipulates the innate power of her own body and its secretions. She supplements this with a technique from the ancient lexicon of magic that remains in the repertoire of the practitioner to this day, albeit in modified form. This is a diabol, manipulating and torturing the sun god Ra until he reveals his secret name. It amply demonstrates the ambiguous side of Isis and arguably all Egyptian deities, who all have this capacity to use violence and deception to get their way. Whilst on the topic of magic, it is worth noting that various pieces of knotted cloth strips were used as talismanic objects in the Isis cult. We should remind ourselves that the knotted cord is the hieroglyphic sign used to spell out the name of Heka, the god of magic. And even in Islamic times, a magician was often referred to as, quote, the blower of knots, unquote. The pieces of cloth used in the cult seem to have begun their existence as the garments worn by cult statues in temples. Temple cult mirrored daily life. For example, the gods were fed and the rooms cleaned 3 times a day. Just as in everyday life, this pattern is very similar to Hindu temple practice. Consequently, the discarded clothes could be expected to retain some power called sikem or haruka. Worn-out garments were valued and so torn into strips as souvenirs for visiting pilgrims. It is likely that the Isis bands mentioned several times in magical incantations are one and the same thing. The dividing of a whole garment into strips may also have given rise to the idea that they were some kind of veil. In fact, Egyptian Isis does not wear a veil or headscarf. But in contemporary sources of classical times, when Egypt was ruled by the Greeks, the idea had become firmly established, viz. Isis and other goddesses wore veils. Another popular knotted amulet is the, quote, blood of Isis, unquote, or the Tuat sign. It is also a strip of cloth, possibly a menstrual towel or tampon used in magical medicine to aid women with such ailments. Over time, the physical cloth is transformed into a piece of image magic, becoming an amulet carved into semi-precious gemstone of the appropriate colour. In the final centuries before the Common Era, Egypt was ruled by foreigners, the Persians, then the Greeks, and finally the Romans. The cult of Isis continued to expand, becoming popular through the colossal Roman Empire. Isis became a universal goddess, assimilating other cults and spreading internationally via merchants, priests, and private devotees. Osiris, her consort, is repackaged as Serapis, in brackets Osiris and the Apis bull, in brackets. The focal point of a pantheon that included Anubis. Horus is also with her, although he is more commonly known as Harpocrates. Another feature of the mechanics of magic is also revealed during this period. This has to do with the relationship between a myth and ritual. The link was not obvious to us until we note how practical magical spells are often prefaced by a mythological episode. Scholars call this a historiola. Essentially, it is a short myth that tells you why the mechanical part of the spell works. The classic example is a magical object called a Horus Sipi. Sipi means small pillar. It is really a piece of sculpture, sometimes large and for public consumption, as in the so-called Metternich stele, other times a small domestic object. They invariably show the child Harpocrates surrounded by dangerous creatures such as the crocodile, scorpion, or snake. The text inscribed on these objects tells the story of Isis hiding with her infant son Horus in the dangerous waterlands of the Egyptian delta. The person desiring protection from scorpion bites assumed the god form of Horus, who is also stung but is saved from harm by this magic. These objects stood in basins which allowed the supplicant to drink the libations of water or beer after it had passed over the object, thereby absorbed the god form of Harpocrates or Horus to literally imbibe the power of his magic. The virtues of Isis. This is the time of the so-called aretologies, or list of virtues, or doxologies, which is a list of names. The aretology of Chaim is the paradigmatic version. It originates in Memphis of the 2nd century BCE, but it could be a little earlier. A composition from the time of the first Ptolemies. Almost all these virtues have an Egyptian background, although a few of them, as indicated with G, are thus far only evidenced in Greek or Roman sources, and thus likely to be an innovation of those times, with perhaps less or no real basis in earlier Egyptian culture. Number 1 is lost. Number 2 is lost. 3a, I am Isis, the mistress of every land. 3b, and I was taught by Hermes Thoth, and with Hermes I devised letters, both the sacred hieroglyphs and the demotic, that all things might not be written with the same letters. 4, I gave and ordained laws for men, which no one is able to change. 5, I am eldest daughter of Kronos, in brackets Egyptian Geb. 6, I am wife and sister of King Osiris. 7, I am she who findeth fruit for men. 8, I am mother of King Horus. 9, I am she that riseth in the dog star. 10, I am she that is called goddess by women. 11, for me was the city of Bubastis built. 12, I divided the earth from the heaven. 13, I showed the path of the stars. 14, I ordered the course of the sun and the moon. 15, I devised business in the sea. 16, I made strong the right. 17, I brought together woman and man. 18, I appointed to woman to bring their infants to birth in the 10th month. 19, I ordered that parents should be loved by children. 20, I laid punishment on those disposed without natural affection towards their parents. 21, I made with my brother Osiris an end to the eating of men, in brackets G. 22, I revealed mysteries unto men, in brackets G. 23, I taught men to honour images of the god. 24, I consecrated the precincts of the gods. 25, I broke down the governments of tyrants, in brackets G. 26, I made an end to murders. 27, I compelled women to be loved by men. 28. I made the right to be stronger than gold. 29. I ordained that the true should be thought. 30. I devised marriage contracts, in brackets G. 31. I designed to Greeks and barbarians their languages. 32. I made the good and the bad to be distinguished by nature. 33. I ordained that nothing should be more fearful than an oath. 34. I have delivered the plotter of evil against others into the hands of the one against whom he plotted. 35. I established penalties for those who practice injustice. 36. I decreed mercy to supplicants. 37. I protect or honour righteous guards. 38. With me the right prevails. 39. I am the queen of rivers and winds and sea. 40. No one is held in honour without my knowing. 41. I am the queen of war. 42. I am the queen of the thunderbolt, in brackets G. 43. I stir up the sea and I calm it. 44. I am in the rays of the sun. 45. I inspect the courses of the sun. 46. Whatever I please, this too shall come to pass. 47. With me everything is reasonable. 48. I set free those in bonds. 49. I am queen of seamanship. 50. I make the navigable unnavigable when I so decide. 51. I created walls of cities. 52. I am called the lawgiver, in brackets Thesmophorus. Thesmophorus? 53. I brought up islands out of the depths into the light, in brackets G. 54. I am lord of rainstorms. 55. I overcome fate. 56. Fate hearkens to me. 57. Hail, O Egypt that nourished me. The Greek author must likely have modelled the above prayer on inscriptions from the famous temple of Isis at Philae in Upper Egypt. The temple was fully functioning within the same time frame. The architectural history of Philae begins in the 25th dynasty, but it was in the 26th Sahic, don't think I've pronounced that right, Sahic period that it really became a significant part of Egypt's religious life. It was rebuilt during the reign of Ptolemy II, 284 to 246 BCE. Isis then replaced Hathor as the primary deity, made such by Nectanebo I of the 30th dynasty, grandfather of the last native king of Egypt, Nectanebo II. There is a very fine collection of hymns to Isis from Philae. The following are examples taken from that collection, either of which could be the source text accessed by later writers, either by reading it directly from the walls of the temple or from manuscript copies in the attached House of Life. Hymn 7. I play the sistrum before your beautiful face, Isis, giver of life, residing in the sacred mound, Eye of Re, who has no equal in heaven or on earth. Great of love, mistress of women, who fill heaven and earth with her beauty, divine mother of Kamutef, great royal spouse of Onophlis, the august one, great lady in the hall of the prince, the mighty one in the mansion of the sacred Ben stone, one who moves freely in the bark of millions, who governs the divine bark. Hymn 4. Indeed, she is the Lady of Heaven, Earth, and the Netherworld, having brought them into existence through what her heart conceived and her hands created. She is the soul, Ba, or Bai, that is in every city, watching over her son Horus and her brother Osiris. They are from Louis Zabka, Hymn to Isis in Her Temple at Philae, 1988, page 107. Apart from standard temple rites, Isis also benefited from a mystery cult of her own, something like the Eleusinian, but with Egyptian antecedents. We noted earlier how the great Hymn to Osiris refers to a mystery cult operating in temples from at least the time of the New Kingdom, if not before. The mysteries of Isis would appeal to a Mediterranean world that was at the time engaged in the syncretization and reform of several older religious cults. So, for example, viewing a god or goddess as some form of personal saviour was very much part of the spirit of the age. Isis was also the paradigm of loyal wife and mother, but also promised immortality to her faithful devotees. Thus the last line of another aretology, that of Isidorus, ends, quote, "Be merciful to me, relieve me from all pain," unquote. The sentiment is thrown into stark contrast by the hymns from Philae, which invariably invoke blessings for the benefit of the king, but nothing more personal.